Hey everybody! Well, I managed to get my hands on another awesome 3D printed model from the 1987 movie Batteries Not Included. So if you've been watching my videos in the past, I already built Weems, Flotsam, and Jetsam, and now we have Kilowatt. Kilowatt is the father, which I didn't even know his name was Kilowatt, but here it is. This is a big kit. As you can see here, these are some big pieces on here. Now, once again, I got these from Andy Valentine on Etsy. I'll put a link down in the description for Andy's Etsy website. He has the files to print this model, and if you don't have a printer, Jacob, my friend Jacob, can print these for you as well. So Jacob has printed all the other robot models for me, and he did another excellent job on these, and these files are amazing because of how nicely detailed everything is. So as you can see here, the lower half is in two pieces and the upper half is in two pieces. And then we have some of the smaller things. Now, I have found a couple of issues with this kit that I'm going to talk about. So first of all, let's take a look at this top piece here. You can see all this fantastic detail. Once again, the detail is really, really good on this. I mean, look at all of that. Here's the inside part of it, and that's what it looks like on the inside. Alright, so now one of the things I've noticed is you'll see these little holes right here. Okay, so those match up. Here's the other half, by the way. Just take a look at the detail on this as well. Now, you got these little tabs right here. See these little things? Now, I noticed that the tabs are a little too big for these holes. So you can try to fit them together right here, but they don't fit. They don't fit in. So I'm hoping... I told Jacob about this, and I think he's going to pass it on to Andy, and hopefully he can make these smaller, because those have to fit in that hole right there, and they're just not fitting. Now, you can always sand it down. I'm trying to line it up. Okay, so see, that's what it looks like. So, I mean, you can sand down the edges right here, and that's what I'll have to do to make those fit in there. But if they were already adjusted, you wouldn't have to fight with it. Because the other kits of Weems, Flotsam, and Jetsam, they fit fantastic. You don't have to really fight with anything. Now here's another problem. Let's take a look at this bottom half real quick. Once again, incredible detail on here. Look at all that. You can see all of that fantastic greebling on here. And then these have the same thing where it's got the hole. And that's what the inside looks like. Here's the other half. Let me grab this one. If I can get a hold of it. This thing's huge. I didn't realize Kilowatt was so big. Here's the other part of him. This is the front part. This is where his eyes come out. You can see that right there. So that's what the inside of this looks like. Now the problem with this one, I don't think it was so much the file as it was with the way this was printed. And I talked to Jacob about this. But see, these actually fit in just fine. But the problem is, see the edge right here? Look at that. You got a horrible, horrible gap going on right there. That should go all the way to the end. And see, this one's the same way. So I think the problem with this is, now this one here, you can see the edges here. These printed perfectly. These are nice and flat and flush the way they're supposed to be. I'm trying to get the light on here just right. But this half here is the one that didn't print right. See how that's got a really bad... right there. See how that didn't print all the way? Now I told Jacob about that, and he said that some of it has to do with temperature. I don't know anything about 3D printing, but he was telling me that on a really large piece like this, sometimes this sort of thing happens. So you can clearly tell. I wish I could get the light on here just right. Let me see if I can get the light on here. Okay, now you can really see it. See that? See how that end didn't print right? It's not smooth. And kind of the whole thing looks a little rougher than the normal. So because it didn't print all the way, it doesn't reach all the way to the other end of this piece. So that's why you've got that gap going on. See how it just didn't go all the way. You can see how that one's... So I'm going to have to use some filler in there. I think I'm going to try some UV resin. I'm just going to put some masking tape along this edge and then just fill that gap inside there with some UV resin. And hopefully, I don't know, hopefully I can get that to work. That's going to be kind of tricky. This one here is a bigger gap, so... And it looks like they don't fit all the way in either. Let me see, let me put that back. See how that's kind of got a gap right in there? I don't know, I'm really going to have to mess around with this and see if I can get it to fit. But yeah, so that's kind of a bummer on this kit. But like I said, I think it's mainly the printing process and not so much Andy's files, although I do think that Andy does need to tweak this piece just a little bit to make that smaller. Now here is the bottom. This is the bottom part. Now in the movie this thing lights up clear, and I suppose you can probably ask Jacob or whoever you have print this for you. They could probably print this whole piece in clear if you want to illuminate this. I'm not going to light this kit as much as this lighting, as this kit would benefit from lighting, because if you look at Kilowatt, he's got lights all over him. There's like little pinpoint lights. Let me see, actually I was going to look at this on the side here. Well, I'm not really seeing. On the side of Kilowatt, maybe it's on this piece. I haven't really had a good chance to look at this. On Kilowatt, he's got all these tiny little windows on the side. I'm not really seeing it on this piece, though. Maybe it's on here. No, I'm not really seeing it on here either. He's got all these little windows that are all over, really tiny pinpoint things. I mean, I suppose that you could drill out holes for those and put some fiber optics in there, and that might work. I'm lighting this thing would be kind of a real bit of work, because you're going to have to drill through. If you're going to make, any of this light up down here, you're going to have to drill through not only the top layer, but the bottom layer. And I'm assuming it's hollow inside there, but I don't know what the supports look like in there, and you don't want to be taking away any critical pieces in there. So it would be a little tricky to light this. So I'm just strictly going to go for painting it. This thing here, in the movie, it has these spinning lights on it, kind of like the Jupiter 2 on Lost in Space. The power core had a spinning light, and they do have circuits that you can use for that. But once again, you're going to have to get down inside here to make the lights, and you'd have to have this printed in clear so that you could have them show through. Here are these little side bits are what fit on the side of Kilowatt's eyes, somewhere over here. Now I'm not exactly sure how this fits. I'm going to have to kind of mess with it. See, there's a little square right here that fits into the square here. So let's see. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to fiddle around with it. It goes, I had it on here once before, and now I kind of forgot which way this goes. Anyway, it fits on here in such a way that it's going to fit on here like this or something. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure it out. And then also this is his unibrow. He's got like this little unibrow thing going on, another nicely detailed piece. Those little notches fit inside those holes right here. So that's going to go in here. I'm going to have to sand this down a little bit to make it fit, but it goes right on there. So that's where that goes. And then also you have his eyes. And you can have these printed in clear too if you'd like, if you want to illuminate those. If you've been watching my videos in the past, the only one that I lit up was Weems. And that's because Weems is my favorite, so I wanted to light him up. But let's see, these fit in here like this. Sorry, I'm a little out of camera range here. It fits in there kind of like this. I'd have to finagle with that, but that's where those go. And then also you have the antennas. They all have these little antennas that go on the side, and those fit down in these little holes right here. Like this somehow. I'd have to, like I said, I've only messed around with this recently. Those are going to go on the side. And then we also have this really nice piece right here. This is the top of Kilowatt's head. He's got this really interesting network of antennas. This was printed in resin, and you can really see it right here. It's really nicely done. And because it's such a fine detail, it was done in resin, but you're going to have to be really careful with this. These are super fine pieces. And that goes on the top of Kilowatt's head up here somewhere. So I'm just going to try to go through here and sand off some of these edges. You can kind of see how some of the edges are sticking up right here. Sand all that off. And then try to see if I can get these two halves to fit together properly. Put a little bit of primer coat on here. I don't know the color of Kilowatt. There's not a lot of reference photos, unfortunately, of him. He looks gray, and sometimes he looks silver, sometimes he looks gunmetal. I have no idea what color he is. To achieve the lighting effect, I think I'm just going to put maybe white on some of these areas to make it look like there's lights in there. I don't know. His color scheme is crazy. And then on the top part, and I think on the bottom too, he's kind of got, it's almost like an Aztecing pattern on there. Where it's different shades of gray on there. I don't know how I'm going to pull that off. I don't have any masks for this because, there's no masks for a kit like this. So we'll have to see how it goes. But anyway, that's where we're going to start off with, and hopefully we can make this look good. Alright, so I've glued these pieces together now. This seam is, it's not too bad. I can probably just use putty to fill that in. Here's what it looks like on the back. I just super glued all of that and used some kicker on there. And then here's the other one. I really do wish this fit better. That gap is really, really bad. I should have asked Jacob to reprint this one for me, and I would have just paid for another one, because that just looks, I don't know, that's really bad. Yeah, that's not good. Here on this side, we can see I just kind of super glued it. So now what I'm going to try to do to fill in that gap here, as I mentioned, the resin. So I found this on Amazon. It's this UV resin. It's a nice big bottle of it. I think this was made for ladies' nails, as far as I can tell. It has this little tip, and then it has this thing. Look at this big old thing for a UV light. See, it's got a whole bunch of them in here. You just plug this in. So I'm pretty sure this is made for ladies' fingernails. You stick your hand under here, but it's got a nice little timer. See, it's got the different timers on here, and it counts down when you do it. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to put some masking tape along this top here, and then I'm going to flip it over. I'll see if I can pour in the resin in here. Hopefully this will work, and then I'll just stick the UV light on there, and hopefully that'll fill that in. And for this, I think I'll just use some perfect plastic putty, because that works really well for some of this smaller stuff. So, I don't know. Hopefully it works. Alright, so I have filled in these seams. I'm not the world's best seams filler, as I've mentioned in the past, but I think this turned out okay. That resin actually worked out very nice for this big gap right there. See how that resin filled that right in? On this side and on this side as well. Let's see, where is it? Right there. Yeah, that worked out very nice. I kind of overdid it over here. Some of it bled over into this corner and over in this corner, so I had to take a Dremel and gouge all of that back out, because that's because this piece, the top piece, isn't going to fit properly if it doesn't. And then I also filled the seam on this as well. This I just used perfect plastic putty. See, I'm not sure which way this goes on. I'm still uncertain about a lot of things when it comes to Kilowatt, but here you can kind of see if I can get a grip of this, because he's kind of a big boy here. But here you can kind of see how he all goes together. This is a pretty large model, I gotta say. I didn't realize Kilowatt was as big as he is, but I guess when you watch the movie, I have to go back and watch the movie again. So I am still uncertain about the colors on him. I think the top here is all a light gray. There's very few pictures of him. I'll have to see if I can make it, take a better look in the movie, but I think a lot of the scenes were so dark. There was some pictures online of the original Kilowatt model, and it was at some kind of an exhibit, and it looks like this is mostly a light gray up here, and then there's just these little panels all over the place, and then the bottom almost looks like it's kind of a light gunmetal, is from what I can tell. It's hard to tell because there's shadows, and it looks like it was in a case and there's reflections on the glass. So I don't know. This is just going to be guesswork. So eventually, I'm sure that somebody will find the exact colors of Kilowatt. So mine will probably not be correct, but I don't know. I guess I'll try to do what I can and figure it all out. And I was trying to see if I could find some decals at the hobby shop where I could put those little panel lines on without having to paint each one of those, but I really couldn't find anything. So I think I'm just going to end up masking each one and then just painting them on there. Okay, well, I've changed my mind. This is this is what it looks like with that light gray color. I found some more pictures of Kilowatt online, and I now think that that is silver. I think it's going to be silver. This is that light gunmetal. This turned out really nice. I love gunmetal anyway. It's such a cool color, and it looks really good on here. There's a dark gunmetal, and I used a light gunmetal. It's Tamiya. And so I think I'm just going to use this. This is gloss aluminum. I'm going to use that for this top section here, because I've used that gloss aluminum on the Lost in Space robot model that I did a long time ago, and once you put a dual coat on it, it actually looks, I think, more like what this is supposed to look like. So I think I'll try that instead. Ooh, boy. All right. Well, I never want to look at masking tape again. Oh my gosh, this is, I don't know how many hours I have spent doing this. So yes, I managed to mask off all the areas that need to be painted in. I'm still trying to decide. I think I'm going to use this. Let's see, is that the darker gray? Let me see, which one is it? Okay, yeah, so there's these, this almost looks like a tan or something, but it's, I don't know. So I'm going to use this darker gray here. This is, what is this one? That's light gray. And I'm going to do that for all these little areas. So all these little areas that you can see masked off here, here, and all these little squares. So Kilowatt's got all these crazy panels everywhere. I was kind of mentioning it's almost like an Aztecing pattern. You can see that right in here. So all these areas are going to be painted that dark gray, and then those little squares, and then along the edge right here. It's crazy. There's a lot of it. These aren't perfect. I did it all by eye and by hand, and so some are going to be wider than others, and they're not going to be in the exact place as you know, like each section. But I don't really care. Just like, I don't know. You know, the whole thing is crazy because I had intended to just build Weems. Just Weems is all I was going to build, and then Flotsam and Jetsam came with them, and I went ahead and built those guys. And then Jacob said, "Hey, Andy's got Kilowatt ready to go now." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I thought, well, you know what? I may as well at least get him going too. You know, the other three came out pretty good, so I'm going to try this guy too. You can see I got the silver on there. I think that looks way better, way better. So now I'm going to have to hand paint each one of these little panels on here, and hopefully that looks okay. All right, well, I hope it works. Okay, so more hours spent. I think I've worked on this all day. So I did do all the dark areas. I forgot to film what that looked like before I started working on these new sections here. But you can kind of see it down underneath there. I really like the way that looks. It looks darker on camera for some reason. It's kind of it almost looks black on here. But I'm liking the way that turned out. And now these new areas, I'm going to use this stuff. I've decided to go and use this. This is the... what is it? Medium gray, XF20. It almost looks like it almost looked like it was white, and I almost went with white, and then I thought, no, I looked at other pictures, and it looks more like a grayish, a light gray. You know, it's really hard. Like I said, the pictures just aren't very good. And then also the model itself, you know, it's really old now. That movie's from 1987, and it looks like there's some wear on it, like almost like rust or something in some parts. So wherever that model was stored, it doesn't look like it was necessarily taken the best care of. Like down inside this crack, you can see where it has split, and there's like some wiring and stuff in there. But anyway, I'm glad I got this part done. After I get these little areas painted, there's still a few little of those light gray areas. Let's see, where was that? I'm gonna have to go back and redo. Oh, right in this area. It's kind of underneath here, but it's gonna have to wait until I can get those done first. But, oh man, this has been insane. Okay, so thankfully I got all of this done. I really love the way this turned out. This looks super cool. Look at that. I love the patterns. Now, on the actual filming model, these look much more subdued. Mine have definitely come out much darker. And, you know, I think it's, I don't know, just the colors I used. I can't figure out the colors they used exactly. Like I said, this looks almost like a white, or maybe it's like maybe like a light gray possibly, but I don't know. It's hard to tell because the lighting is so different in every picture I see. But you know, it looks like more of a. It almost looks tan here. But what's very interesting about that color is so look at this particular stripe right here. Okay, so you can see the color it is right there. But as I go right here, see how it starts to get lighter. And look, it almost becomes invisible. Isn't that weird? Look at how it's playing off. You can't even see it right there. That is really bizarre. So you can kind of see how this one looks gray, like a really light gray. But then when I come up on it, see how it's actually this darker color? It's really weird what that's doing with the light. I don't know if it's that particular color or if it's the way it is on the silver. Say you can see it looks like they're all light gray right there. And then you got this. So this color here actually looks like what it looks like on the model. So maybe they used something like that. I don't know, because it almost looks like a white, like an off-white right there. But then when you come on it, look how much darker it gets. I really love that effect. That is really cool. That was completely by accident. as Bob Ross would say, a happy accident. But I really love the way that turned out. That looks really good. Okay, so now I am working on the lower section here. I think I'm going to go a little bit lighter on the bottom here because the bottom has a whole lot more detailing going on. As you can see here, there's a ton of greeblies all over this thing. And there is these panels on here, just like the top. But, it's hard. There's no way I'm going to be able to paint between these things. And I think it's going to make it look too busy. Maybe I might highlight some of these with silver or something. I'm going to have to definitely take some artistic license with this. I tried originally back here starting with, where let me grip this here real quick. I tried putting all these originally where you can see the panels on the actual filming model. And then as I started going around, I started taking a little more artistic license with it just because not all the details are exactly correct on this model, but they are pretty darn close. I gotta say, they are pretty close. And so, there's some areas I decided to put panels where there wasn't any, and there's some where I didn't put any where there was. So this is just for the darker color, the dark gray, this one here. And so I got to go back and start doing the light gray panels too. And then maybe I'll do a little bit of weathering in between all this greebling, just to kind of add a little bit of, I don't know, like coloring in there or some kind of highlights. But there wasn't really that much weathering on Kilowatt. He's not that weathered. It's the panels. And honestly, in the movie, you can't even hardly tell that he's got panels because when I went back and watched it, the special effects were from 1987. So sometimes he looks bluish because of the way the light was. It was superimposed probably on a green screen. And so the technology wasn't as good. I mean, everything would be done with CGI today. And so, it's the color on these models is just really kind of hard to pinpoint exactly correct. But anyway, I guess I'm going to go ahead and get busy on this. Okay, so now here is that darker gray color on all of these. I'm kind of glad I didn't go completely crazy with all these all over the place, even though they are definitely more prominent on the actual model. And as I mentioned, I didn't put these in the exact same spot as you see on the actual filming model. I don't know how many of those guys they actually had. I don't know how many Weems and Kilowatts and Flotsam and Jetsams and Carmens that they have or had for the movie. So who knows, and maybe they're all slightly different in the paint possibly, but this is kind of cool. Even here you can kind of see how that effect on the paint is different. Like, see how it looks like a light gray here? But then it's like more of a dark gray here. See, dark gray, and then if we go this way, look at how that changes. It is so weird. I think it's these colors, possibly the silver and this gunmetal is maybe doing it. I don't know. I really like it though. So now I got to mask off the little areas for that lighter gray, that kind of brown or like tan color that I showed earlier for the top half. And then I think I'll just do some weathering. Like I said, I'll probably just use some pastels and maybe look like there's a little bit of streaking in here, even though the original filming model doesn't have that much weathering, but it needs something else possibly. And I don't know if I'll weather the top. I don't know if I want to ruin it the way it looked. Maybe I'll just leave it the way it is. Who knows? Maybe I won't do any weathering. All right, well, I'll show you what it looks like when I get that other color on. Okay, so there we go. We got all these colors on here. Same colors as I did on the top. I definitely took some artistic license with this. Especially for this color, I did not use any of the reference photos to put those on. I just went with what I just kind of felt like putting on there. I don't know. I gotta say, of all these robots that I've done so far from this movie, this one's kind of given me the most trouble for colors, and I don't know why. I guess because the other ones were much more obvious. These ones seem to be harder, and plus there's not a whole lot of reference pictures, but I do like that. I think it looks cool, and once again I think we're kind of getting that weird color effect from that. See how that changes again? It's so weird. I love that though. It's really neat. So I got this done. I'm not going to do any more with this. I think that's all I'm going to do. I don't want to overdo it. And I've decided not to weather it because looking at the original model, it's not weathered. Any dirt and wear on it is just from age because I don't know where it was stored. Here's this bottom piece. This is another part that I just decided to just kind of paint like this. Just put a few little colors on here, the same ones. This section here, that dome, that lights up. In the movie, that lights up. And when the model is turned off, when it's not being used, it looks like this. It looks like a frosted piece of plastic. So to achieve that, I ended up using white, and then I mixed in a little bit of one of these grays in here. One of those grays. I think it might have been that one. And just to kind of get it an off-white color, and I think that actually looks just fine. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And so, the debate here is, since I'm not lighting this up, do I paint things to look like it's lit? And I think I'm not going to. Like these little things right here, that slot right there and here, that is kind of like it looks like maybe a thruster or an engine or something, and it's blue. And I was going to paint those blue, but I've decided that it's really going to make it look kind of weird. A little bit, I don't know, I think the blue is going to stand out too much. Same with the eyes. I started painting the eyes, and here's what these look like. So I started with white, and originally what I was going to do is when his eyes are lit, they look like they're kind of an amber color. So I was going to paint this clear orange on there, and then, and I was testing it on a piece of plastic. I painted it white and then put this on here, but I think that's going to look a little gaudy too. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go with copper. Because when he's turned off, it looks kind of copperish, and keep it more of a metallic, coloring for the whole thing. I think that's all I'm going to do. His colors are really, I don't know, I just really have a hard time. I've been really struggling with it, but I think it'll look okay. And after that, I think that's it. He's very monochromatic. There's not a whole lot of, glaring colors. It's the lights on him that make him look so colorful, but, like I said, lighting this thing would be really difficult. So I'm just going to go with what I've got going on here, and then after that I think I'm going to start putting them together. I'm so much happier with this copper color. I'm glad I didn't go with that orange. This looks better. That way everything has more of a metallic look to it. Yeah, that looks cool. I think that's going to look really cool on him. And then I forgot, I got to paint this thing. This is the top that goes on the very top of his upper half, and it's silver too. It matches the same color as the upper half of his body. Look at these really small pieces. I had to heat this up because the bottom, that little plate down here, this part of it, was a little warped. It was like a little, it curved upward on the end, so I had to heat it up to make it bend downward. Because see those two pieces right there? They were actually touching the base, and it wouldn't sit it wouldn't sit flat. It did have these little struts on the bottom, and I think the middle piece is supposed to go into the hole on the top. I just went ahead and just grinded everything off, and then that way it's nice and flat and it'll just fit on there. I could just glue it in. But yeah, super fragile for that piece. Alright, here he is all finished now, and oh my gosh, he looks fantastic. Absolutely love this. I gotta admit, when I first started working on this, I really wasn't that motivated. And I don't know why. I'd work on it for just a little bit, and then I kind of gave up on him, and then kind of went back to work. Once I kind of got my mojo going, I really kind of started feeling better about, just kind of the way he was turning out. But the paint job is definitely what makes him look really good. Since I'm not going to do lights in this, I knew I had to make the paint look decent. I'm still a little uncertain about the paint color. I don't know if he's as silver up here on the top. I don't know if he's as dark on the bottom. He might be the same color all the way through. I really don't know. It depends on the way the lighting is always hitting him. And, the pictures of him, that it looks like he was in a museum or some kind of display somewhere. And it looks like there was like two different ones that I could see. One looked better than the other. One of them looked pretty rough. This whole network of antennas were missing on one of them. It was like rust spots. And there was like, this whole section was split. And you can actually see a gear in there too. It was kind of interesting. So yeah, I don't know what was going on with that one. There was another one that looked much better. Everything was still kind of there. So I don't know how many of these guys they made, like I mentioned earlier, but this one, this turned out really good. But I have to say, out of all these models that I've built so far, from batteries not included, this one was the most difficult. I had the most problems with it. Let's get a close-up view of his front section here. So the eyes turned out really good. I'm glad I went with that copper, like I mentioned. I just think it looks better. Since I'm not going to light him up, if you decide to light up this model, I would have it printed completely clear, like the whole thing clear, because if you watch the movie, Kilowatt's got all these tiny little pin lights all over. They look like windows. He almost looks like he's a little spaceship. And I think the one guy in the movie looks deep inside there, and he sees all these little light things moving around in there. And I don't know if that was supposed to be creatures from space that are living inside here, or if that was like the life force inside Kilowatt. I didn't quite really understand if these guys were supposed to be spaceships and there were beings inside of them, or if these little guys were robots themselves. I'm not really sure. I didn't quite understand that part of the movie, but yeah, you'd have to have this printed and clear to make everything light up. And what a lighting challenge this would be, because if you watch the movie, this top ring right here, right in this section, it has this weird red light that kind of spins around in there, but it's not just a spinning light. It has like these weird animations. Like sometimes the lights get longer and shorter, and it would be really hard to pull that off. I'm sure somebody could do it with some LEDs somehow, but I'm not sure it would look as cool as it did in the movie. And I think this lower section was either all white or it had that same kind of thing going on. So, yeah, I mean, you'd have to have this printed in clear so that you could mask everything off, and then you'd have to be pretty good at electronics to figure all that out, which I am not. So there was no way that I was going to, you know, try to even attempt to light this up. But I don't do that much lighting in models anymore anyway. But, you know, here's the antenna. I really love that. Look at the cool details on there. So yeah, I did have a lot of problems with this. As mentioned, you know, earlier in the video, I really think that the printing on the one half of the bottom here wasn't done very well, because the one side was perfect, the other one wasn't. As you saw that gap, I had to use some serious, you can see the seam right there. I had to use all this resin in there to fill that in, and that was kind of a pain. The other thing is that the way this thing was made on the bottom, it wouldn't fit on top of here. There was like one, I don't know what you call it, it's like a lug or something that is in the center that would go in the hole there, but then it's got these other lugs on the side that don't go anywhere, so I didn't really understand that. So I ended up just shaving all of that off, and then like I mentioned, this was kind of warped down here. I had to heat it to kind of get it flatter. You can kind of see it's not quite even. Another thing I had a real problem with is getting this upper half attached to the bottom. For whatever reason, there was a gap going on here, and it kept wobbling like just a little bit, like front to back, and I could not get the wobble out. I took a Dremel and I Dremeled the inside of this edge on the inside, and then if you remember, on the inside of this is that ring, a really thick ring that goes around. I ended up grinding that entire thing off, because no matter how much of it I ground off, it just wouldn't fit right. And it's not easy to grind this PLA plastic, this 3D print plastic, because, you know, as it heats, it of course melts, which is what it's supposed to do. And it just made a big mess, but it was the only way I could get this thing to fit. And even then, I still had a little bit of a gap in the front. You can still see it right here. And so what I had to do was I took a hot blow dryer, like in the hottest setting, and just kind of held it on here. You had to be really careful with that. And then as soon as it was soft enough, I would push down on this to get it closer to the edge. So you can kind of see it's not even, because I didn't quite get it just right. And over here, you'll notice it's a little higher right here. And that's because when I was heating this up, this piece, it's a very fragile piece, was getting really soft. So I had to be really careful with that. So I had to kind of leave that the way it was, because by that time I had already glued that down. But it looks way better than it did. You should have seen the gap that was in there. But I don't know why that wasn't fitting right. I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was in the files that maybe something didn't quite fit, or I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just some warpage on the plastic itself. That could have been it. There's these neat little antenna things that they got. Yeah, and so, I mean, I don't know. And then the other thing I screwed up on, it really frustrates me, and most of you probably don't even notice it, but now that I'm going to point it out, you're going to see it. It's, you know, I think they say that a model builder should never point out their mistakes, but I'm going to point this one out. So as I was gluing this part onto the bottom, I was fighting with it, and I was using 5-minute epoxy, so I only had 5 minutes to work, and I had to really slather on the 5-minute epoxy on the inside and get it all the way around, and then make sure this was lined up properly, and then I had to masking tape the edges to make sure it was good and tight. Well, in the process of doing that, I slightly misaligned the top. Now, if you look, let's see that little square right here? Let me see if I can focus. Okay, that little square there, and then there's another one on this side, and then there's one more over here. Now, the way you can tell the front of Kilowatt is between two of those squares is one of these indented areas. See this little indented area right here? Well, it doesn't match up this way between that square and that square. See how there's no indented area that's lined up? And between this one and this one right there it's not centered with this indented part. The only way that it does is this way. So this is actually the front of Kilowatt, because see, you got the square there, and then this thing is right in the middle. That's where it should be, so that is the front of him. And if you notice, this line, this little painted decoration right there, should line up with the middle of his nose area right here. It should line up here. So during the process of trying to fight with getting this thing glued on, I accidentally scooted this over just a little bit. So it's a little off center. And it drives me absolutely crazy. My OCD wants nothing to do with that. But it was too late. You know, I used 5-minute epoxy to make sure that stayed on there, and it had already set. So unfortunately, it's a little off center, but I guarantee you 99% of people won't even notice it. But, you know, another thing that I think I should mention to Andy, or maybe Jacob can pass it on to Andy, is the seam line. As you can see, I'm never very good at fixing seams, but here's the seam line for that top part, and it goes all the way over to this side. Well, it's pretty dark over there. Let's see. Where is it? Okay, this side turned out better. You can see it. But now, what Andy should do is make the seam go from side to side, because on the bottom it goes side to side. See, the seam line is down here, and it goes straight down across. So the seam line should match, because the way you do it, the way he's got it now, if you have this as the front, which it is, now you've got this seam line right on the very front, and it's not even, you know, like lined up with anything. It should go straight across. So maybe that's something he can change. But other than that, you know, I mean, it's not a perfect kit. It's probably, of all the kits, I would say this one probably is the least, I don't know, like the least desirable, but I still like it a lot. Looking at the bottom here, this went on just fine. It was perfect the way that fit in there. I really like the way that white section looks. It does look like it's a frosted piece of plastic in there, the way it was painted, but I really like the way this texture is on here as far as the paint work goes. I went back and I kind of checked the details on these light gray areas, and I did try to follow what they had on some parts of the original filming model. I'm not sure they're all exactly the same, but there is a lot of greebly work down here, which is really well done. I mean, this print is fantastic, and so is the files. Andy's files have been phenomenal when it comes to these things. It's amazing. But you can see all this nice detail going on here. And he's heavy. This is a hefty model. He's breaking my back right now holding this. But you can see all this nice detail going on in here. But yeah, I really like the way that turned out on the bottom. So this model doesn't come with a stand. So what I ended up doing is I bought this this cylindrical, it's called a riser. I got this from Amazon. It's hollow on one side and it's solid on the other. I think it's meant to be used this way so you can put stuff on top here, but I needed it to go this way so that the bottom of Kilowatt can fit in there. And then to make that a little softer around the edge, I took some of that tubing that you use in fish tanks and I just kind of wrapped that around the top. And then that way, Kilowatt can sit right on top of that. So here we can see we can just set him on there. So that little bottom section kind of rests down inside there. And then you can kind of see how that sits down in there. And that's perfect. So it gives him a nice little way of being displayed. I think if I would have had my druthers, I would have made those light gray parts kind of like an insignia white, because they look a little lighter on the original filming model. But I'm fine with this. I mean, you know, mine are, they kind of stand out a little bit more. Like I said, the original ones are more subdued looking, but I still like the way this turned out. That was a crazy masking job to do on this. But if you want one of these models, I will put the information down in the description. Andy Valentine has the files for this. So if you have a 3D printer, you can make one of these guys yourself. But if you want somebody to print it for you, hit up Jacob. Jacob is the one who did the print work on this one. He also did my Weems, Flotsam, and Jetsam as well. He did a great job on all of them. Oh, I will say that I did talk to Jacob about that issue involving the bottom here, so hopefully he will kind of keep an eye on that from happening again in the future, and maybe he can pass on to Andy about this seam going side to side. I think that would be better, but overall this is a great kit. I mean, there is not a lot of kits out there of Kilowatt. I think there's one more person out there making a kit of him as well, but I'm just glad to see that these guys are finally getting their just due, because that movie is one of those movies that just kind of fell under the radar, I think. It's such a great movie. You know, it's a feel-good movie, and it's just kind of fun to watch, and I love these guys. They're the star of the show. But yeah, I can't believe I got four of the cast members, four of the little robots from the movie now. But I also have Carmen. Carmen is now on the way. Jacob told me that Andy has made Carmen now, and he is currently, Jacob is currently printing Carmen for me, and I'm very, very grateful. So I will finally have the entire family of all of these guys. It's going to be really cool. So all I'm missing is the mom, so we'll be getting her soon. Alright, so as soon as I get her and start working on her, you'll see a video on her as well, and hopefully I can make her look good, because once again, she's got another funky paint scheme, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off on her. But anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. I would very much appreciate it. So, until the next video, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one!